Well, a very good evening, everyone, and welcome to our preview of the Lockinge, sponsored by Shaqab and BetVictor, from whom Sam Boswell joins me. And as always, Jim McGrath is here as well. Very good evening to you both, gentlemen. Looking forward to the weekend, I'm sure.
Yeah, really excited, Richard. It's going to be some top-class racing across the 2 days, but the Saturday especially looks like we've got some really, really interesting heats, and really pleased to be associated and sponsoring and supporting the card.
And Jim, it's nice always to get a headline act as well. And in the main race, we've got Palace Pier, who in his division is the dominant horse, I think it's fair to say.
I think it's fair to say he's the outstanding miler in Europe at present. He sets a very high standard, and he was very impressive on his reappearance. So, you know, a good horse, as you say, a headline on a really competitive afternoon is, if you'll pardon the cliche, the cherry on the cake.
During the course of the next hour, we'll be hoping to speak to Aidan O'Brien, Richard Varian, James Tate, Kieran Shoemark, Ali Begley from the sponsors, and also Keith Otterson, who I think will be joining us in a moment or two's time. But just first of all, well, Keith is actually there. So let's quickly deal with the ground, because that is obviously going to be important. So welcome, Keith, to the evening. Had 4 seasons in one day at York in various times. So I don't know what's been going on at home. I'm just down the road from Newbury, so I normally have a pretty good feel for things. Good evening, Keith. What's the state of the ground?
Good evening, Richard. Good evening, everybody. At the moment, we've given the going as good to soft. That was after 3 millimetres of rain overnight. We had some further rain today, which was forecast, which came to just over 3 millimetres. And we'll see how that gets in. But luckily, that stopped just after lunchtime. And it's been clear since. It's quite cool. Fingers crossed we don't get any more showers overnight tonight. And we start off tomorrow on good to soft ground. The forecast for tomorrow is a better day, sort of sunny spells with the chance of scattered showers. I mean, that's what the forecast is everywhere, I think, is scattered showers. But hopefully we miss them, and the course is in good shape and should take them well. But I fully expect that we'll be on the easier side of good. It's not soft, it isn't good, so we'll call it the one in the middle, which is good to soft.
And you think that's likely to hold right the way through from Friday into Saturday?
Well, the one thing you don't like as a clerk is when you get rain during racing, and as the track opens up and the rain goes into it. And of course, we're racing tomorrow before Saturday, and I'd really like to miss any showers that are around tomorrow afternoon. And if we do get the odd one, we should take it well. Hopefully there's not too much rain overnight into Saturday. And then if we get a clear day, I'd hope we'd be around about good to soft, and that's what's predicted, and it is what most people are expecting.
Okay, thanks very much indeed for that update and for your time this evening. I'm going to move quickly on to Aidan O'Brien, who thankfully has found the time to join us. That's really kind of you, Aidan. I know it's a particularly busy period for you at the moment, and obviously we're very keen that you support the race as well, which you have done this year with Lope E. Fernandez. I'm sure you've been in communication with Keith about the ground during the course of the few days. So a very good evening, Aidan. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, good evening, Richard. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very good, actually. We're just chatting to Keith about the weather, and perhaps that's a good place to start, really, because, I mean, literally, you know, this side of the water, we've had warm, then cold, then everything. It's just been very difficult to get any continuity. How would you sum up sort of how it's been preparing horses this spring?
Yeah, has been dry recently. Obviously, February was with plenty of rain, but since late February, I think the ground was okay, and I think it was okay for everybody, really, Richard. I think it was dry enough spring.
Where did it put you in terms of getting horses ready?
Yeah, no, I think we were okay, Richard. I think that the horses, everything went kind of according to plan. There was no big issues weather-wise or that. And listen, like usually our horses do improve from their runs usually.
And looking about the travel situation, obviously a lot was made around the time of moving horses about. You tend to bring them in on the day. Have you found it easy enough to commute these horses like the ones we've seen at York this week and Chester last week?
Yeah, I think so. Well, some of the horses in Chester came in overnight, and it was the same at York. So I suppose there's not too big a difference. I suppose with people, probably there's more of it's a little bit more difficult than the horses. The horses is straightforward enough, really.
And is that because obviously, presumably everyone is still having to quarantine when you get back? How do you deal with that sort of staffing situation, if you like?
Yeah, so we do whatever we have to do, really, Richard. And obviously, as you know, it's changing all the time. It's 5 days, 10 days, 2 weeks, you know. So and it's different in every, like in all the different countries. And like I said, it's changing on a daily basis. So it's just to kind of try keep everybody up to date. What we're supposed to do, really.
And does that mean you've largely stayed at home? Have we seen you at all this side of the water?
No. Yeah, I was in Newmarket, but the problem is when I go to Newmarket, I can't do anything for 5 more days when I come back, if you know what I mean. So it does restrict you a good bit. But Newmarket was the only travelling that we did this year at all. Yes, and I suppose I don't think we hardly travelled at all last year.
Jim, there's a few press men that like Aidan there, aren't they? When they go to Newmarket, they don't recover from 5 days, but it's absolutely nothing to do with the travel.
No, I've been incredibly lucky. Been to get to most of the trials, and obviously, like you, Richard, I've been at York this week, so that's been a lot of fun.
Can we just start there, Aidan? Actually, because one of the questions we've got in, and you feel free to ask questions on this, it was from John Samuel, and he was actually asking about high definition today. We didn't obviously get the chance to talk to you. What did you make? How pleased were you with his run?
Yeah, no, we were very happy, Richard. Obviously, last week we wouldn't have thought we were going to get to run, and obviously, like it was far from ideal. But we knew if he was going to run in the Derby, he kind of had to run. So, isn't really like we were, I suppose, delighted. Really, we were looking for a good run and for him to run well. Like I suppose. Like last week, we wouldn't have said that was going to happen, and it was just an unusual thing he went through, and obviously it definitely had to affect him. But listen, we were very happy with his run really today, Richard.
Yeah, he's such a nice, big, imposing horse. I suppose that begs the obvious question as to whether he'll handle Epsom or whether the Irish Derby would suit him better. I know you've known decisions at this stage, but any thoughts on it?
I know, yeah, I wouldn't think he'll have any problem handling it if he's going. They usually, if they're good enough and able to travel well enough, they'll handle Epsom, you know. So I thought he did very well today. He kind of got caught kind of in the second half of the field, and Holly went an even gallop, but the field didn't really follow Holly for, like, they followed her for 3 or 4 furlongs and then didn't follow her, and then I suppose they sprinted down the straight. So it probably wasn't ideal for him. Like, he's a big cruiser that keeps lengthening, and he did keep lengthening, but just the line just came a little bit too early for him, really.
He'll obviously have that little bit of extra distance to travel. I mean, Jim, I suppose, from your form perspective, hat on, Bolshoi Ballet still sets the standard. You think that's fair? Now we've just about had every trial.
Bolshoi Ballet. Well, I mean, I worked for Timeform for years, and just looking at what they did, they'd have that trial 4 or 5 pounds in front of the winner today. But they're all lightly raced horses and improving. Bolshoi Ballet was very impressive on Sunday. His time was fast as well. You must have been pleased with him too, Aidan.
Yeah, no, delighted, Jim. Really, we liked him a lot last year. He had a nice run first time, and then he went and won his maiden very easily. And then we always knew that he was a horse who was going to be probably trained for Epsom, and our plan was to keep him at home. So we had a choice of whether we travel him late last year or go to the Derby with no travelling experience. So we knew the trip was plenty far from at that time, and the ground was heavy in France. We knew it wasn't going to be ideal, but we felt that he had to go for experience, and he ran a lovely race, and we were delighted. And the plan always was then that he would have the 2 runs in the 2 trials here in Ireland. He was ready to run the nice first day, but stepped forward nice bit from the first day to the second day. And listen, we were delighted with him, really. He's a horse that you don't mind making the running if you have to, because he's very relaxed and easy. We always thought that there was a good chance that he would get 1.5 miles. And I suppose what he can do, he can quicken, which is a very, very serious thing in like a very important thing in a race, So, and that's what he does, really. He travels, relaxes, and quickens, I think, Jim. And I think you'd have to be impressed with the way the last day did, where he did quicken when he turned in.
Yeah, there'll have to be good ones to beat him, I think.
Yeah, he's he looks uncomplicated at the moment, Jim, doesn't he? Really.
He looks, as you said, to have everything. It's quite interesting, Aidan, watching what you do, because I remember going to you and you telling me how the lads and the jockeys saw what horses wear their different bridles and type of bits. And you've run two lately. The horse today, high definition, just wore an ordinary snaffle. He looked a lovely horse to deal with and to wagon. And the filly Santa Barbara that people have been talking about, it may be difficult. She had the same on, and she was like an old sheep at Newmarket as well beforehand. So they look as though they've got nice temperaments.
Yeah, no, absolutely, Jim. They're like, I suppose everything has went very well for them through the winter and the spring, and that can be a big factor in that. They have no hold-ups. Their minds, their bodies built up, and then their minds relaxed very well, and they got very confident. And I suppose that is it. Like they're very bittable. Like Santa Barbara shows loads of pace, but very relaxed pace. And the two horses, the horse today, the same. Like he's a lovely horse, lovely mind, and in no way flustered. And I think the horse in Leopardstown was like that as well, So it's a big help. Listen, I obviously, the mentality of a racehorse is a very, very serious part of them, isn't it? Really, it's the same, I suppose, with a human being. Like you can have all the ability in the world, and if the mentality is not right and they're not good natured and bittable and understanding and all those type of things, it just makes it a lot harder, doesn't it? Really.
Well, you just seem, I don't know if Richard would agree with me. We seem to have a lot of red hoods in England now, Richard, and earplugs, and it was just actually nice to see that these two very high profile horses, on the basis of just what they wear at the races, look pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I think that's true, isn't it? The more gadgets you can have, if you like, it becomes like a fad to actually use them. But as Aidan said, possibly simplicity is best. I'm interested, Aidan, you said about Bolshoi Ballet and the travelling of horses before they get to their big races. Is it a piece of the jigsaw you like to have got out of the way before they line up in the in the Oaks or the Derby?
Yeah, absolutely, Richard. Like obviously over here, like we usually fly in on the day, and it's a box that you kind of like to have ticked, and like I suppose until you've done that, it's an unknown, and like obviously all their little habits and that we like to know or kind of expose them before the big day, so that if there is any little thing there that we can work on it, So listen, that's why it was a big one for a high definition today. He had to fly. Like he that's why it was in his thing that he would fly for his prep, and that's why he did today. Like obviously his two easy runs were at home and he had never flown, so that's why it was important that he would fly over and to see how all that would work, and just to make sure that he's used to it at the time. But usually if they're in a good place mentally, it's like us all. Like if we are mentally in a good place, we can deal with any situation easily. And if you are a little bit shaken up and flustered, and like little things can become big issues, really. But that's usually the way with them. But still, not it's a box that you like to have ticked, really.
And so on the Santa Barbara front, I mean, obviously what you just said, the bringing her over. I mean, you could have found an easier trial in the way than the Guineas. Was it also important, if you like, to get her involved in a race she wasn't just going to run away with? You could have run her at Chester, probably she'd have been a very short-priced favourite. She probably would have won very impressively. Was it part of that sort of to introduce her to racing at the top level as well? Yeah,
Santa Barbara's a bit unusual, where like she's a brilliantly gifted filly, and what she has, it's very hard to find in a racehorse. And it was always the decision from a very early stage that she wouldn't have she'd only have very few runs, because like that brilliance is very hard to find. But if you go looking for it too much, you can end up losing it. So it was she was always, from the time she won her maiden, but probably before her maiden, she was only going to run in the maiden. Her next run was going to be the Guineas, and then her next run after that was going to be the Oaks. And then we were going to decide whether she ran any more this year or not. So listen, I'd imagine, like obviously her first run went fine, and she'll be trained for the Oaks. Then we'll see, like, would she have one run or two more runs, or leave her? But it's very possible. Like she could have only maybe 4 runs this year at most. And that was always the plan. Like I suppose the thing that wasn't ideal in the Guineas, the ground was so fast, and the pace wasn't very fast. We would have preferred to have a faster first half of the race, so that they wouldn't be running down into the dip as fast on hard ground as she had to deal with. But Ryan did a great job. He nursed her and looked after her as best he could. But we felt that she had to run before the Oaks, and obviously it was another chance for her to run in a big race and a classic. But listen, she didn't win, but we were very happy with the run, Richard, really, you know. So yeah, I suppose the answer was it'll be probably always, if everything keeps going the way we think with her, she will be only running in those big races, really.
Yeah, that's interesting. And Jim, I mean, there's a much better programme for older fillies and mares, isn't it? So it's interesting. I can almost tell Aidan you're thinking beyond 3 with her as much as anything else. So it is nice to see that the modern trend, in a way, Jim, to see these fillies stay in training for longer.
Yeah, absolutely. And if the programme hadn't sort of been introduced, certainly in Britain over the last 20 years or so, we wouldn't have seen half of the lovely fillies that we've had. But I suppose we ought to look ahead to the Lockinge.
We should, yes. Sorry, Aidan. So Lopinge Fernandez, he's clearly very talented. Have you just begun to get a little frustrating that we keep just hitting the crossbar in those top races?
Yeah, no, we were delighted with him really last year. Richard, what threw us off a little bit was the Irish Guineas was a little bit of a mess, and we didn't know whether he was a sprinter or a miler or whatever. And because it was such a mess of a race, and he quickened from the back and shot through to go and win. So we were just a little bit confused about the whole thing. And that's why sometimes if the pace is solid and even, at least you come out of racing, you know where you go. So after that, we knew he had plenty speed. We felt like he was going to get a mile, but then we were saying like maybe he's not a miler, maybe he's a sprinter. So we messed around with him a good bit. And obviously, in all fairness to the horse, he took it well, but it wasn't far from ideal. So I suppose at the end of the year, we ended up coming to the conclusion that like this horse is a miler. Like he ran some serious races in sprints, and he used to come there traveling and cantering, you know. So his last run then was in the Breeders' Cup, and like we were over the moon with that. So we decided then, listen, he's a miler. We were going to get him ready for the mile races this winter. He done very well physically and mentally. He settled down and did everything really lovely after sprinting and being pulled and dragged the whole year last year. So we were delighted with his run in Leopardstown, and the plan was always his 3 runs were going to be Leopardstown, the Lockinge, and then go to Ascot. So like I said, we couldn't have been happy with his first run, and we're looking forward to Saturday with him.
He's always been an absolutely lovely looking horse. I remember seeing him as a juvenile. So you'd hope that he continued to strengthen. How do you assess his chances against Palace Pier, who obviously does set almost an unusually high bar actually for this race?
Yeah, no, we're looking forward to it, and like we love when big horses are in the races like that, because that's what everyone wants, and it'll make the race competitive, and like we will find out a lot more about him. But we're really looking forward to him, and really delighted that Palace Pier is running, really.
And Jim, I mean, obviously it's a potentially high quality race. How do you assess the relative merits of the two where we stand at the moment?
Well, if you look at what we call the standards of the race, Palace Pier has 3 figures that would win 4 years out of 5. So he sets a very high standard. I mean, he's not a Frankel, but he's a very high class miler. But Lopinge Fernandez is very impressive in lesser company. It's a perfect prep. Top rank similarly, also won a listed race. He's a bit more to find. And Lady Bowthorpe's a little bit of a lady herself, but she can run, and she did the job very well in the Dahlia.
Okay, we'll chat about a few of those. Aidan, thanks for being so generous with your time. Best of luck with Lopinge Fernandez, and thanks for being so open about your classic plans. Look forward to seeing you over this side of the pond when you're not having to self-isolate when you get back.
Pleasure. Look forward.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, Dax. Bye-bye.
Sam, can we just have a quick chat about markets, and then I'll get to the sponsors, Ali Begley. So let's have we'll start wherever you like, really, because maybe we've been talking Lockinge. Maybe that's the obvious place.
Yeah, I will just actually give a quick mention to the Derby, considering how much chat we just had about that. 6-4 Bolshoi Ballet is with ourselves at the moment. High definition after today, 4-1. Hurricane Lane 6-1. Give him a mention. Obviously, was a decent winner. Yes, let's talk about the Lockinge then. So we've got a very, very strong favourite, as you can imagine, looking at the betting with Palace Pier, who's 4-6 with ourselves. I think it's only really just about been, I think, slightly bigger at any stage from when betting's opened. Lopinge Fernandez is in there 6-1. Next in is William Haggis's horse, My Oberon, who's 9-1. Top rank, looking forward to hearing from James Tate a bit later on this call. He's a 10-1 shot, and then it's bigger the rest. But it's kind of going to be a case of, I think, people trying to play for each way angles against Palace Pier rather than taking on the favourite directly at this stage, looking at the market.
Okay, well, let's welcome to the evening Alison Begley, representing the sponsors Al Shaqab, who very generously have maintained the prize money level at pre-COVID levels, which I think is, in the current environment, particularly welcome. Jim, put your Newbury hat on for a second just before we say good evening to Alison. How important is it to have a sponsor that's so loyal as Al Shaqab are in these circumstances, but also that maintenance of prize money that you can very much trumpet?
Well, it's pretty much priceless in the circumstances. I mean, it's fantastic. I mean, you've got a marquee race, you've got marquee prize money, and you've got a top international contest. So brilliant that Al Shaqab have been so generous. Thank you,
Alison. Very, very good evening.
Hello, Richard.
How are you? Nice to see you.
And you? A long time no see.
It is a long time, isn't it? I was trying to work it out. I won't say how long. It's too long. But, and it's particularly nice in a way, Alison, because this was the race that sort of did get lost in 2020. Most of the others were sort of rescheduled, but this was the one that it was getting too close to Ascot, and so it must be particularly pleasurable to get it back.
Yes, no, it was. It was obviously we were really sad that we lost it last year, but it's great that we've got it back this year, and it looks a very good renewal, and it's wonderful to have horses like Palace Pier running in it. So we're delighted to have it back on this year.
And maintaining the prize money, it goes against the trend, really. And you've already heard from Jim about how appreciative Newbury are, but it's always a balance, isn't it, for courses and for sponsors to decide where to put the money. So I think everybody welcomes the fact that it's going to be a prize worth running for, and that's no doubt contributed to the strong field.
Yes, well, we just thought, Sheikh Joanne felt that it was really important with prize money being hit so hard by the pandemic that we maintain the sponsorship level that it was before the COVID. So it was very important to us to keep it at this level if we possibly could.
And there's lots of talk at the moment about the sort of horses that you race regularly. Al Shaqab aren't afraid to spend money on horses, about why you should race them in this country. So you had a 2-year-old winner, I think, with me at York after we went off air this afternoon. And is that reflective of your continued commitment to the UK racing?
Yes, no, definitely. We've sort of for the last couple of years, we've Sheikh Joanne's been very keen to build the homebred, all our homebreds, but he bought sort of 23 2-year-olds that we've got in England for this coming year, and he spent money at Tattersalls and in Akana, and so he bought a lot of yearlings this year, and so we've got both running alongside each other now, the homebreds and the yearlings. So we've had 4 2-year-old runners and 2 winners. So at the moment they're all running well, so long may it continue.
Yeah, absolutely. And Jim, that's really important, isn't it? Because obviously everybody's focused on, prize money and the difficult times we're emerging from. But it is hoping that we can keep everyone, on side. The migration of the slightly higher quality horses abroad is something some trainers have made quite a bit of.
Well, yes. I mean, no prize money when the residual value of horses these days, particularly the better ones, there's such a strong market for them. You're an owner, you might only have 1 or 2 horses and you get a good offer. If there aren't the races to run in Britain, you don't really have a lot of option. But that looked a nice colt today. I mean, he I don't know if you were able to keep in touch, Alison, but he was a poor unfortunate horse that the loose one went to charge in the paddock, but I think he kicked out. I don't think he caught the other horse, but he certainly shooed him away pretty quickly. But it can't have been a very nice experience.
No, so I hear, yes, that he was that happened in the paddock. But yes, I was speaking to Richard beforehand. He was very much saying, he'd been pleasing them in his work, but was very much first day at school today and would come on a lot for the run. So it was a pleasant surprise that he won. Thought he'd run well, but I think he thought he had the other one by Maymas in it as well. And that having had come from the breeze ups, that horse, and then having had a run already, he definitely, I think, was the sort of second string today. But he's always pleased him at home, and I think he just thought that he probably needs the run today. So hopefully there'll be improvement to come as well. So
good luck with it.
Nice one to have on the team and by Maymas as well. So that's exciting for the Sheikh.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. I suppose that's and just finally, Alison. I mean, when people watching in this, when you're going with the orders, where are you tending to buy? You've already mentioned a couple of sales. Is it just a mix? A few from the breeze ups who are ready to go, or is it just someone who comes to you and say they've seen a nice type at whatever sale?
No, I mean, we set it out to buy at Akana and at Tattersall's. We sort of thought we'd go to book 2 because we thought there might be better value there, but it was very strong market there as well. So, but that's normally where we buy. But absolutely, if there was a very nice horse at with Doncaster or Goss in Ireland, absolutely we would, Sheikh Duran would consider it. But those seem to be the 2 main sales that he's always bought from, and we've bought horses from the breeze up sales, and Maymass being one of them. So
yes, of course, yes. And I mean, the market has been remarkably resilient actually for the raw material, hasn't it?
Incredible, yeah, no, it really has, absolutely. So there we were thinking we were going to get some bargains, and the market was very strong. So, but this ad came from Tattersall's book too, so hopefully he'll go on to bigger and better things.
Alison, thanks for your time this evening. Obviously, thank you very much indeed for your support. Nice to catch up with you again. Hopefully be able to see you in person out on the track before too long.
Let's hope so. Now owners are getting back on the track. Great.
Yeah, this is great. Thanks very much indeed, Alison.
Thanks.
Alison
Bye.
Shaqab, who very generously sponsor our headline race, the Lockinge. And we're going to move straight on to Kieran Shoemark, who has a ride in the Lockinge. And that ride is Pogo. I'm not sure whether Kieran had the choice between Pogo and Lady Bowthorpe, who of course was successful in the Dahlia under Kieran. So it's a bit unfortunate, Jim. We've had plenty of jockeys who had to choose down the years. Hiya, Kieran. How are you? Very good evening.
He's mute.
Sorry, can you hear me?
I think Richard's accidentally ended up on mute. Try again.
I think I get muted by external sources rather than the other way. Kieran, it's nice to actually speak to you. How are you, right?
Yeah, really well, thanks, Richard. How are you?
Yeah, good. Yeah, very good. Thanks so much. So did you have the choice? Was it one of those really, where you had to grin and bear it when you realised Pogo and Lady Bowthorpe were both heading for the same race?
Yeah, it was a bit of a painful one. I suppose it wasn't really a decision to make. I think politically, I did the right thing by choosing Pogo. Charlie Hills has been a big supporter of mine, so there's a loyalty thing there at the same time, And Emma Banks, the owner, and William Jarvis of Lady Bowthorpe have been very sort of supportive, and they sort of backed me when I made my decision. They understood the loyalty thing side of things, so and they said I could keep the ride on her afterwards. So yeah, look, very, very much looking forward to being part of the day.
That's really important, Jim, isn't it? When you've got an agonising decision, etc., and you're worried that you make the wrong one, you're going to lose the ride. The momentum has gone. But it's great that Emma's staying loyal to Kieran further down the line and fully understands the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would think, Kieran got a great tune out of her at Newmarket when we were there the other day. Kieran, she must have been quite busy because she got a stalls ticket, didn't she, the other day? So she presumably she's been out and passed that no problem.
Yeah. So I'm not entirely sure how it works, but I think because she's had a request to have a late load 3 times in a row or something.
Right.
Then they have to do a stalls test, and she did it at Chelmsford the other evening, and she was absolutely fine. So.
Great.
But yeah, no, she's not too much of an issue. She just has a blind in late to load, and she's a hugely exciting filly. And I mean, we all watched the Middleton Stakes today, watching Queen Power pretty much romp home, and Lady Bowthorpe got the better of her in the Dahlia Stakes, so that was very exciting.
Yeah, she seems to have progressed nicely. It's also nice. We've mentioned Emma, mentioned yourself, but for William as well. It's a little while since he's had those sort of Grand Lodge days, if you like. So it must have been a really, really enjoyable win in the Dahlia.
Yeah, absolutely. William's such a nice guy, and he's so passionate about his horses. And same with Emma Banks, like her enthusiasm towards the racing and her horses, her love for her horses is pretty spectacular. So it was a big team effort, and William always truly believed in this filly, and to see her go and win a Group 2 was fantastic for us all. And I do fancy your chances in the Lockinge. Look, I'm in no illusion that Palace Pier, he turns up, he's hugely exciting, miler, and but I thought the way she won the Dahlia Stakes, she isn't a filly that wants quick ground. She's by Nathaniel. She's got a bit of a high knee action. She'll improve again on the soft ground.
Yeah, that was the main question I had going into that race, actually, because she'd been so impressive, last year at times. Remember, she was at Lingfield, she won, absolutely putting a cart, and then possibly didn't get the greatest luck in running at Newmarket later on. But must admit, I did wonder whether the ground was important. So yes, you're right. The softer ground, based on her previous form, going before Newmarket, would look an asset.
Absolutely, yeah. And the way she won the Valiant Stakes, it was pretty soft that day as well. And she showed a mighty turn of foot by swooping the field and going away at the line. So, I'm very excited about sort of getting back on her in the future.
Well, a bit about talk about the one you actually are riding as well in Pogo, who actually made quite marked strides, almost under the radar as far as I was concerned. You sort of pinholed him slightly as a handicapper. He ran really well at Ascot, but then his form sort of suddenly took off, and it wasn't just a fluke because he sort of backed it up after that. And looking at your record on him, is it 3 wins and 2 seconds and a third from 9 rides? So you've seen that progress firsthand.
Yeah, he's actually a higher rated horse than Lady Bowthorpe. He's a typical example of a horse that really does improve with age. He's highly consistent. I suppose we've kind of changed the sort of the tactics in the way we started to ride him now. He's ridden sort of by making the running or a lot more prominent in a way. He was always sort of dropped out in those big handicaps, and he always used to run on late, but he loves sort of being put into the race early. And I'd be slightly concerned, about the softish ground. He's got bits and pieces of form on easy ground, but I do think he's better on the quick ground. He's had a lovely prep at Leicester, winning that listed race. And he was only sort of 85% fit going into that day. So he's one that will definitely improve for that.
Jim, how do you sort of line up those horses? Pogo and Lady Bowthorpe gave you the choice. What would you?
Actually, that's a good question. I mean, when you think back through Lady Bowthorpe, 7 runs ago, she was running off 85. It's astonishing progress. Whereas Pogo, the last time he ran in a handicap, was off 105. It's a bit of a cliche, but they're all good horses, aren't they? And a lot will depend on whether, Keith's hopes about the ground are realised, that it stays good to soft and it doesn't get any softer, in which case it would become a slog. But Lady Bowthorpe won what was a relatively steadily run race, and she did well to win it. So although her bare form, if you ignore Sir Michael Stout's filly today, if you just look at the level of her form, you say, well, she's probably got to find £5 to £7 to make the first 3 on Saturday. The fact that she came from a bad position to win that race, she's clearly improved. It wouldn't surprise me if she stepped forward again. No.
And Kieran, as regards the likely pace in the race and hence the potential to ride Pogo forward, which, as you say, seemed to, certainly in France, lead to an improved performance. Is that what you'll be particularly paying attention to?
I'd imagine so. He's a very uncomplicated horse, and he's very likeable. He sort of jumps the stalls really quickly. So I wouldn't want to disappoint him in a race like that and take him back. So I'm sure I'll use his stride. Century Dream possibly could be another one to go forward. I'm sure there won't be shorter pace, but it is. I'm aware it is hard to make the running in the Lockinge, just straight mile and Newbury. So, but look, it's a big step up. I'm sort of more hopeful rather than confident. Palace Pier, I suppose it's very hard not to be so impressed with him at this stage. And John Gosling, I listened to his interview after Sandown, and the horse actually looked fairly well and looked like he was carrying plenty of condition. Yeah. So he could take a huge step forward again.
Yeah, that's the way. And just finally, Kieran, then we'll let you go. In a way, we're chatting about 2 really good horses, and it's great that your career's sort of got this resurgence, and these are the level of horses we're talking, because that's probably the hardest breakthrough, do you think, in terms of getting rides in these big races. You know, you can go around the houses and try and rebuild your career to a point, but it is those horses that run in the public eye in those top races that really puts your name in people's minds.
Definitely, Richard. You as a jockey, you need to be competing on the big Saturdays on ITV, riding in these big Group 1s. We all, so as you know, as jockeys, we need to try and ride Group 1 winners. And at the moment, I've got a couple of horses that, you know, could potentially be competitive in Group 1. So it's hugely exciting for me. And, you know, it is very important. And as a relatively young person, it's very exciting.
Excellent. I really wish you all the very best on Saturday. And if it's a horse that goes past you on Pogo, it's not Palace Pier. I hope you wouldn't mind if it was Lady Bowthorpe.
Absolutely not.
Kieran, thanks very much for your time. Best of luck for the weekend. I look forward to seeing plenty more of you on Saturdays on Big Race Mounts.
Thank you very much. Take care. Thank you.
Thanks, Kieran. I mean, that's the thing, Jim, isn't it? It's fad, or, you know, you don't necessarily become a massively better or worse rider overnight. It is just getting on the raw material consistently, and the opportunity as much as anything else.
Yeah, it's getting an opportunity and then taking it, isn't it? Yeah, so many.
Sam, we're going to link into Roger Varian in a second. I'll actually start with Roger with the BetVictor London Gold Cup. So just give us the prices for that, and then we'll sort Roger out, who has done really well to join us, because I know he was at York today. So hopefully his connection will hold as he travels back to Newmarket.
Yeah, the London Cup, really pleased to be associated with a race of this nature. It's always a very, very interesting race, ultra competitive. We are offering an extra place as well already on there. So these prices you can, if you want a bit of each way thievery, get 4 places. But we've got co-favourites of 3 at the head of the betting currently. We've got Baybridge 9-2 for Sir Michael Stout and Ryan Moore. We've got Highland Rocker in there for John and Thady, Gosden and Frankie at 9-2. We've got the unbeaten Tamborada, who comes in here for Charlie Appleby. Been pretty impressive on the all-weather, and then recently last time out as well. Next up, we've got Richard Hannon's River Alwans 11-2. And then Roger's horse Dubai Sands is in there at 15-2. I quite like him as well, I must say. I thought it was quite a nice win last time out at Ripon. And then King Frankel 10-1. Bigger the rest, Richard.
And just historically, Jim, for those that want to dot the I's and cross the T's, this is the race that came from Alexandra Palace. I think.
I didn't know that. Is it?
Yeah,
really?
absolutely. It was one of their feature races of the calendar. The centenary came and went about 2 years before the place shut, unfortunately. But it's got a really good history. It's nice it's been salvaged, albeit few miles down the M4. Talking of motorways, I don't know how Roger's getting home from York today, but Roger, thank you very much indeed for joining us. How far have you got to home?
I've actually just walked in the door, Richard. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, excellent. Oh, that blimey. You can tell we're still in lockdown.
Well, I don't know. I've got very used to not going racing midweek. I did York yesterday up and back, and York today up and back, and I haven't missed the travelling, I can tell you.
No, that is one aspect, isn't it? As we were just talking to Sam about the London Gold Cup, can we start with that? Because we were talking about good roll of honour. I was looking, there's lots of Rogers, most of them are Charlton, but you've got a very good winner in the not too distant past in Defoe. So it must be a nice race for you. Yeah,
it's always a nice race, isn't it, for a progressive 3-year-old who you don't want to quite pitch into pattern company. And I think the Roll of Honour is a prestigious one, considering it's a handicap.
Yeah, I think that's right. Al Kazim, time test, they're all, they turned out to be top class horses, didn't they?
Yeah. Defoe obviously went on to win a Group 1. It was a lovely race to get him started, probably under similar conditions to what we're likely to face on Saturday. I should think it was testing that day back whenever it was when Defoe won, and I should think it will be testing this Saturday as well.
Yeah, we had Keith on at the top. He's hoping for good to soft, but it is, as you've been at York, you very hit and miss those Shaz. If they do hit, they can deposit quite a bit in one whack, particularly if they've opened the ground up during Friday.
Exactly. I think we'll have an idea Friday, won't we, what it might look like on Saturday. And, we just don't know. I think they had plenty of rain last weekend and probably, topped up in showers this week. And I guess tonight and tomorrow, Saturday, depending on what they get, it could get very testing, or they could get away lightly and if it's good to soft, that's probably best case scenario for everyone.
So let's start with Dubai Sands. It is a bit of a guessing game, as you say, when the handicappers give them marks off the back of, impressive wins, when they're entitled to win in smallish fields, in novices or maidens. So how happy are you with the mark you've been allocated?
It's probably a fair mark. He ran very well in defeat at Nottingham. And then he won, as he should have won really at Ripon. It wasn't a strong race he won at Ripon, but he won. He won in the manner of a nice enough colt. He's a hard horse to judge at home. He's very laid back. He's not flashy in his work. He only just does enough. We'll learn a lot about the horse ourselves on Saturday. I've got a feeling that there's plenty in the tank, and that he'll be a horse who comes alive in the afternoons. Because, as I say, he doesn't give us too many clues at home in the mornings. And providing he puts his best foot forward in the afternoons, that's a nice way to have him.
Jim, what did you make of it in terms of the marks? Because time form, as you say, to all the numbers, the collateral's the same way the official handicaps do, but it is still a little bit of glorified guesswork, and some will rate some lines of form higher than others.
Yeah, I mean, you've hit the nail on the head. I mean, time form's idea, they work in with the same set of tools as the BHA handicappers, but they have different objectives. The BHA handicappers trying to make them all finish in a straight line, and time form are trying to separate them. So they've separated one at the minute, King Frankel, who's run a bit more than the others, and they've got him significantly clear at present. But all the other horses that Sam's run through have all got small P's on them. A lot of them are well bred, and it looks a typically fascinating renewal. And of course, quite a bit of the form that we've seen so far this season has been on quicker ground. So if the going changes and you dive in and take advantage of Sam's very generous prices that you have at the minute, you could come unstuck on the going. Never mind the form.
Roger, before we move on to Lockinge, can I just deal with a couple of other horses you've got on the card on Saturday? Ascension makes a relatively swift return. Was it entirely the track at Chester that was the reason for the poor run?
We think it was, and he actually was fine after the race, scoped fine after the race. We've been very happy with him at home. He breezed this morning. He moved nicely. Again, his pre-race checks are all absolutely fine. He looks very well. I think a mile on easy ground is what he wants. So, we were quite happy to let him take his chance again. Now, should he not perform for any reason on Saturday, then we might need to give him a bit longer before his next start. But he got trapped a little bit wide at Chester. He's a big horse with a big rangy stride, a strong traveller. It's funny when you run horses at quirky tracks, you try to picture how it's going to turn out before you go. And I thought it might suit him. I could see him travelling and sort of kicking off at Bend at Chester. The opposite happened. He didn't enjoy it. He travelled for about a furlong, and that's not him. And once his chance had gone, Andrea accepted it. So, he's a horse who came out at the beginning of the season in the Lockinge. He ran better that day than his finishing position. He got stuck in traffic when he really needed to get going. And whilst I'm not sure he'd have quite been placed, I think he finished 9th. I drove home thinking if everything went right, he might have been 5th. So I thought that was a better run than a bare form looked at the time. Chester just didn't happen for him. I hope he'll bounce back on Saturday. But I guess after 2 relatively uninspiring runs, he needs to.
Well, have we lost Roger there?
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
I think we only lost you briefly. Let me move on then to Ishada, which again, not dissimilar in a way to a London Gold Cup in a way, except we're talking here about she's in the listed fillies race, loads of horses that have won one race. Have you been pleased with her, how she's come on from last season?
She's been a filly who's been quite slow to come to hand through the cold spring, but I think she's getting there now. She did a lovely piece of work earlier this week. I think she'll be suited by Newbury, galloping track. Any ease in the ground will not inconvenience her. And she's another one who's not flashy at home. think she's a big sort of long striding galloping filly. I should think she'll get beyond a mile and a quarter. I just thought it was a race where we could put her in, learn a little bit about her. I think she's nice enough to run well in a race. Whether she's quite up to winning or not, we'll find out. But I just thought the likelihood of soft ground on a galloping track, is right up her street, and hence we'll let her take her chance.
Yeah, excellent. Well, to say there's lots of promising horses in there, so I hope she acquits herself well. So let's move on to the Lockinge. I just wanted to start. I know you were with Michael for a prolonged period of time. I was trying to work out whether that included the Racti year, because this race actually does have a reputation of producing standout performers. Hawkwing, I suppose, for Aidan, who we had on earlier. I think it probably was Racti's finest hour running them ragged. Were you with Michael at that point?
Absolutely, I was. Yeah. I remember the day very well, and I don't think on that day a horse on this planet would have beaten him.
It wasn't the easiest, was he? I mean, that was where he finally channeled all that energy, shall we say, into the right direction in style.
You're right, he wasn't the easiest, and you knew your fate really when he left the paddock. If all the pre-race preliminaries had gone smoothly, then if he fired when the gates opened, he was as talented horse as I should think I've ever seen. And I think that day at Newbury, everything went right. The ground was very firm, and as I say, I don't think anything would have beaten him on that day. But it could go pear-shaped with him as well. And he was a frustrating horse, but I think he won 6 Group 1s for Michael, and not many horses can do that. I should think if he was a bit easier to manage mentally, he would have won more, but then maybe he wouldn't have been as brilliant when we got it right. So he took the rough with the smooth with Racti, but when he was good, he was very good.
Yeah, it's good. That's a good summary, isn't it, Jim? Because it is. You never know whether those quirks, those foibles, are what, when they all fall into place, is what makes brilliance.
Well, he broke the track record, didn't he?
Yeah, I think it was a really strong following wind. Roger said the ground was quick, and they just never saw which way he went. It was amazing.
He was a very good horse on when everything dropped right, as he said. He was pretty special, yeah.
So this year's representative, Roger, for you is Lord Campari, who started off last season with a bang. He made a very taking impression. Then I suppose it's difficult when they become such a talking horse as to know where to pitch them. How do you sort of look back on his season last year?
Yeah, frustrating season with him. He's a horse with a lot of talent. He won incredibly well on his seasonal debut. I think he was undone a little bit by the compacted season that COVID presented us. And I should think in a normal year, he would have maybe won that novice at Newbury in April. And we could have took our time a little bit in sort of getting him through the nursery stages of his career, maybe with Royal Ascot as a focus point. And I think he won maybe the third week of June or something last year, and everything then had to come quite quickly. And he over raced at Newmarket in the listed, I think that's a Henry Cecil Stakes they call it, and he didn't finish his race off then. And then he went to Deauville, I think, and Olivier rode him, and it was heavy ground that day, and he never quite got his feet out of the mud, and he didn't run poorly, but nothing really seemed to click for him or go right since he won his novice at Newbury. And we'll have to see how he fares on Saturday. It's possibly not ideal jumping straight into a Lockinge on his first start this year, but we had intended to run him at Leicester in the 7 furlong listed race, and he just had a little niggle almost. I think we declared him maybe the day before or the 2 nights before a race. We had to withdraw him, and that would have been ideal to get a run into him pre-Lockinge. That wasn't the case, but he's trained nicely, the last 10 days. His work's always been up to a very high level at home. We feel if he can relay that onto the track and be mature enough and be enough of a grown-up to handle a race like the Lockinge, then as he showed last year, his first run of a season might be a very good one.
That's interesting. I suppose he obviously handles Newbury fine. That's an interesting point. I'd really forgotten about that compacted nature of the season. It's very easy, isn't it, to look back and as we're in a normal calendar year, it did all come very fast, didn't it? I suppose if you had a horse that won a novice, it was quite difficult to make all of those races, whether the Derby was put back, obviously, but particularly Royal Ascot was looming large, wasn't it, by the time they were just reappearing for their first runs?
Yes, I think, probably other trainers would share the view. I felt it made programs with certain horses a little bit of a rush, if that makes any sense. And maybe this horse was a horse who could have done with, spacing things out a little bit more and having a bit more of a progressive year than the one he ultimately had. But he's a horse who won extremely well on debut. I think he won 9 lengths or something, and the horse he beat Frank Reform a handful of times after that. So, he showed himself to be a high-level colt on that occasion, and you could forgive anyone for sort of shooting high after that race. And it didn't quite work out for him as we would have liked, but he's a big horse who was quite raw last year. Hopefully mentally and physically he's grown up a bit over the winter, and he'll take the process a bit better this time around.
Well, thanks for joining us, particularly on the back of I'll let you go and get some tea and leave the A1 or wherever it was and came down behind you. So Roger, thanks very much indeed, and look forward to the weekend. Look forward to catching up with you out on track as we go through the season.
No trouble. Thanks, Richard.
Thanks to Roger Varian and Lord Campari. It's interesting, isn't it? You're hearing them talk in their gym about, they're stepping stones some of the time, aren't they? You overface a horse, but, or just sort of hoping that it makes a man of him, toughens him up for future events around the line. Aidan wants to travel them before some of the big meetings. It's not always all about the day, is it? There's sometimes the experience that accompanies it.
Yeah, absolutely. But certainly when you're building a horse, I remember Michael Dickinson saying years ago, the longer you can prepare a horse and bring him on, the longer he'll last. And when you get a season like we had last year, where you've very little option once you've won a maiden, because if you won a maiden in the first week in June, that's probably most of June gone. If you've got aspirations for being quality, you had to go and take a big jump rather than a little jump. So yeah, this horse looks an interesting example of that, and it'll be fascinating to see how he gets on at the weekend.
I think James Tate's going to be available to join us as well. I think James has been waiting patiently whilst we were speaking to Roger. So, James, thank you very much indeed for that. Whilst we line James up, here he comes. Hi, James. How are you? Right?
Good evening. How is everybody?
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Mr. Thank you for waiting patiently. Roger was flying, obviously, down to get in the front door. So, and we've talked about the race, and we have. I think Jim, you asked about Top Rank because you were the one who was very intrigued. I think we're at the top of the program about you gave them a mention that was slightly out of kilter, which made me think there was a little bit of
No, I've always loved the horse. I actually saw it. I wonder if James will give me a rueful smile. I saw him win at Ripon, pulling a bus last year on his season. I thought, why didn't he start that off in the Royal Hunt Cup? I mean, it would have been an absolute certainty, wouldn't it?
Yeah, Thirsk, but yeah, apart from that, you were right, yes.
Sorry, Thirsk, I beg your pardon.
Yeah, well, so Markham, it's a pretty fair performance of 91. We're just looking at, his form. Give us a sort of précis of the horse's career, James. We'll obviously chat about the horse's chances on Saturday, but how have we got to this point, really?
I mean, now he's completely unrecognisable from what he was. I mean, he was a gangly, funny-looking yearling, quite frankly, hence he only cost 26,000. And then he was an okay, gangly-looking 2-year-old. And then he was quite a nice, shelly-looking 3-year-old, and he's just improved. But during that time, he's had lots of little setbacks. And so the answer to Jim's question was he wasn't ready for the Hunt Cup.
And those little setbacks, I mean, I suppose in a way, if they're happening when the horse is getting handicapped and you've got that mark and you've got some scope. But I mean, he did start off, we were looking at, it was 91 his handicap debut. I noticed he was rated 83 when he won at Newmarket, but I presume that wasn't a handicap.
No, that was a handicap.
That was a handicap. Okay, so his starting mark was 83. So it gives you a little bit of progression, doesn't it? When they're not quite the finished article yet, as long as you can make them the finished article.
That was one of my few nice experiences prior to a race. I turned around to my wife before he ran off 83 at Newmarket and I said, "Isn't it nice to know that this can't possibly not win?"
Really? What were you, 10 to 11? I suppose it was a coin. I mean, you were 10 to 11 for a start. That probably says
don't say that. You might fall over.
So obviously he now very much looks the finished article, and a return to winning ways at Doncaster right at the beginning of the season, is the ideal return. So he is still improving. That's fair to say, isn't it? His form continues to pick up almost race by race.
Yeah, and if you saw him and knew him as he progressed over the years, you would understand why. He's only now looks to finished articles. The old thoroughbred was meant to be bred to mature as a 5-year-old, and he absolutely is that. He is bigger, heavier, and stronger than he's ever been. He's only a Group 3 winner from last year, so he has a jump to make it to Group 1 level. But I'd be very hopeful that this is his year anyway.
So obviously Palace Pier, we've been speaking to Aidan about Lope Fernandez. Certainly Palace Pier sets a very high mark. If you were talking to your wife now, where would you be pitching the midpoint to finish?
Well, I suppose we're at the stage where Palace Pier looks head and shoulders above the rest of the field on form, but from there down, everybody is obviously sticking to the old adage of don't be afraid of one horse.
Yeah, and Jim, that's always fair, isn't it? I mean, it is very easy. Sam's prices when we were talking to him earlier, and I'll come back to Sam for the prices on the Aston Park before we leave. Yeah, any horse can underperform for any sort of reason, and at 8 to 13, take that horse out, it becomes a whole different ball game.
Yeah, well, I mean, the point of decent prize money, and it's such a contentious issue at the minute. But to have a race with decent prize money encourages people to pick up on James's point. Don't be afraid of one horse. It's a great pot. There's good prize money for second and third. You can probably win as much for finishing second, James, as you win for some Group 2s at the minute. First prize in a group.
Definitely. I think well, I'll have to check it, but I think second in the Lockinge is probably more than for winning a Group 2. Yeah,
so there's plenty of prize money. The race is built to attract the top milers. The money's there, and the horses have come, which is what it's about at top level.
Obviously, as you say, you're setting quite a high bar for the first run. Does that mean you've sort of got an idea of a Royal Ascot race or a plan for the season moving forward beyond this?
Well, at the moment, we think he is a miler. I think he's got a little bit quicker from last year to this year. He's certainly got sort of stronger looking quarters on him. And I thought when he won at Doncaster, admittedly that's only a listed race, but which he was carrying a penalty in. But I thought he quickened up well. He probably showed as much speed as he's ever showed on the racecourse. So I'm happy with him over a mile. The flat track would be nice. The easy ground would be nice. So yeah, I mean, I'm just excited to see what he can do on Saturday, and then take it from there. Really, of course, he's entered in the Queen Anne, and that's the dream.
That's why we might be with him. So thanks for that. Wellhahn goes to Newmarket. I think he might have been in Newbury at some stage, but he goes to Newmarket on Saturday instead.
Yeah, I mean, he's a new horse for the yard. He's like Top Rank's mini-me, to be honest. He's been cantering behind him for a while. 2 grey Dark Angels, and they look. Yeah, I mean, he's just a little bit smaller than Top Rank, but apart from that, he looks quite similar. So it would be nice to have a double.
Brilliant.
I love the confidence, James. It's very engaging.
Richard's frozen.
He did.
He's in a hotel room. I'll pick up. So James, just before you let you go, overall, how pleased have you been with the season so far?
It's been okay. Look, I mean, the horses have been running well. Some of them are not as fast as we wish them to be, but they're in good health. And this Lockinge on Saturday is certainly one of the races we've been looking forward to since the very start of the season. So we're excited to see at what level he can pitch up and see what happens.
Well, it's really kind of you to take the time to join us. So best of luck at the weekend, and look forward to seeing you at Newbury.
Thank you.
So, Sam, that leaves yourself. You're going to give us an update on the prices.
Yes, Richard wanted me to give you just a little bit of update on the Aston Park Stakes, which is a really interesting race because we've got a proper match-up here with Awassi for William Haggis in there at evens, Logician 15 to 8. I think plenty of people I think we'll want a Cyber Magician personally. I'm not sure we've got that the right way round, but that's just my opinion, and I don't make the prices, thank goodness. People will be pleased to know. Thunderous next in there at 7-1, 11-1 Ranch Hand, and then bigger the other two that are in the field. But I think it's a real reflection on the proper quality that we've got on show at Newbury, Jim, and I think it's something that we're all going to really look forward to, and it'll give people something to enjoy as we head towards, hopefully, the end of lockdown and people returning to racetracks to be able to come and just enjoy the action. I know we've got a lot of Newbury members on the line, and I'm sure we've reiterated it before, but just how keen we are to get everyone back and enjoying the action.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment, I haven't got any horses in training, but I've thought several times over the last few months, if I had one and I hadn't been able to go and see it, it's been so frustrating for the owners, and so many of them being loyal and stuck with it, that it hopefully, fingers crossed, it's coming to an end very soon. Let's turn the tables. You're the one that does the prices. If you had to pick a horse to be on at Newbury on Saturday, what would it be?
Oh, this is quite an easy one for me, but it's a short price, and you never trust a bookmaker giving you a short price tip, do you? But in the 150 that we sponsored, the listed race on Saturday, Tactical goes there for Andrew Balding and Her Majesty, obviously. A good winner last time out, previous Royal Ascot winner. I think we've got the horse there at 15-8. If you believe the ratings, is absolutely clear of everything else. We opened betting, he was 7-2, 15-8 now. That'll be my pick to give the people watching, hopefully, a winner at an all right price.
Well, Sam, I'll hand you back to Richard now. He's just given us a winner. Tactical is his nap, and he's given it a big G up.
Okay, excellent. I apologise. Obviously the luck we had with the hotel Wi-Fi ran out. I changed settings and everything randomly, so I hope it didn't spoil your enjoyment too much. And apologies for not being able to say cheerio for James, but Jim's always a safe pair of hands. Sam, have you done all of your markets and the Aston Park as well?
Yeah, we've whizzed through that. And just to say, obviously, we will have some offers on the day, so do visit BetVictor.com, check them out. I'm going to try and twist the trader's arm into going top price on Palace Pier in the Lockinge. I may not succeed. If you don't see me in one of these again, you know that I did, and Palace Pier is absolutely hacked up. But we shall see what we can do. I'm sure we'll have something special considering we're sponsoring on the day. And yeah, really looking forward to it. Yeah,
Jim and I are going to do. What should we do, Jim? Take the best price on Palace Pier and roll it up into each way on the London Gold Cup before places, and yeah, that should do nicely, shouldn't it?
Well, actually, the London Gold Cup is bugging me because I'm itching to back Mark Johnson's, but I'm worried about the ground. So I'll probably wait until the day when Sam's wonderful 10-1 will have disappeared into the ether, probably. But the ground for me is always key. You know, if you're backing anti-post, you really do need the odds in your favour, because you simply don't know what the ground is. So anti-post is speculative, and with just a couple of days to go, I'll wait.
Sam, obviously, we thank you for your support, the link with Newbury for this season. And finally, Jim, I should leave the last word to you, really. You know, on the board at Newbury, the importance of both the Lockinge, but also just the importance, we're on the verge of potentially welcoming crowds back. You know, how important these race days are going forward for a racecourse that is, on its own 2 feet. You don't have the support of a group and the group functions, and be able to retain prize money with a good sponsor is vitally important.
Yeah, we're very, very lucky with Al Shaqab and obviously BetVictor in maintaining this day. It's a marquee day for Newbury, and the horses are here, the prize money's here, all set fair for a really, really big day. But any track that relies on corporate spend, Richard, which not all of them do, but a lot of them do, and certainly the bigger ones have been hit hard. I mean, they really have lost a lot of money. So let's hope that over the next few weeks we can really get back on track and make owners and trainers and the people who pay for the horses happy once again.
Yeah, and hopefully as well, we look forward to really welcoming members back, and hopefully we won't always be engaging with you so remotely with Zooms dropping in and dropping out. We'll actually be able to see you in person. I'm sure it was probably the best bit of the show, the bit I wasn't on. So thanks to Sam and Jim and Aidan, James, Alison, Kieran, and Roger as well. Thanks for their time this evening. We do look forward to welcoming you back. In the meantime, enjoy the weekend at Newbury, racing tomorrow and Saturday, and keep an eye on those showers from us here. We look forward to seeing you again during 2021. Enjoy the Lockinge.
All the best.